Well, hello my friends, welcome back to my channel, and you guys can tell by the title, today we are doing a January reading wrap up. If you guys missed my wrap up of 2024, I shared with you guys my goals for 2025 in terms of reading. The biggest thing I wanted to do was work on my physical TBR in terms of books that I've had sitting on my shelf for a very long time. And so I put a lot of them in this mug here, and Dorothy, so she can judge me if I am not reading my physical TBR books. My goal for myself was one of my old physical TBR books a month, and I'm happy to report I did that. I accomplished my goal this month. I read one of my old physical TBR books, and then the rest were new and fun and exciting. So let's begin. So far in January, I have read 7 books. One is a novella, so 6.5, but we're calling it 7, okay? Because a book is a book. The first book I read in January was Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. I am a huge fan of Lisa Jewell books. I find them to be very, honestly, crazy and fun, and just really good mystery books, thrillers, kind of scary sometimes. So this is the second book of hers that I've read. I read None of This Is True, and that book blew my mind, okay? Like, I'm relatively new to thriller books and mystery books, so Lisa Jewell was like the perfect author for me right now. So if you were like me and are like dipping your toe in mysteries and thrillers and are kind of a bit of a weenie hot junior, me, okay? Lisa Jewell is a really good mystery thriller author to look into. I will say, Then She Was Gone was pretty freaking creepy to me personally, just because it specifically touches on things that scare me. All right, so I gave Then She Was Gone a 3.5 stars on Fable. I'm actually choosing to use Fable this year instead of Goodreads. I really like Fable. I've been really enjoying it. It has more information, and it's honestly more fun and cute. Like, I like the aesthetic of the app, so if you want to follow me on there and join Fable, you definitely should. It's been really fun. I really like it much better than Goodreads, honestly, so check it out if you haven't already. Let me give you like a bit of a synopsis of the story to not like ruin the whole thing for you, so you don't get the whole book ruined for you. But basically the story follows this family, specifically the mom of this young girl named Ellie Mack. Ellie Mack is like sunshine personified, like Little Miss Perfect, her mom's favorite child. Genuinely, her mom has 3 children, a son and 2 daughters, and Ellie Mack is the favorite, and it's very clear to Ellie Mack and the other 2 children and the husband that Ellie Mack is the favorite. Basically, Ellie Mack disappears and is never to be seen again. There's like video footage of the street where she disappeared, because she was then there a moment and gone the next. Basically, the police chalk it up to Ellie running away, and the mom doesn't believe that because she's Mrs. Golden Child. Why would Ellie run away? Like, she had it so great here. Like, the mom knows Ellie so well. Like, what the heck? So the mom never gave up on finding Ellie Mack. We meet different characters along the way. The other 2 main characters that we meet is the tutor and this man named Floyd and a young girl named Poppy. And they're all intermingled and tangled together. And the twist is pretty crazy. I will say this book touches on like kidnapping and like child abuse and stuff like that is hard to read. So if that is a trigger point for you, be mindful of that. But I, as a Weenie Hut Junior, your local resident Weenie Hut Junior reporting for duty, I survived reading this book, and I did have to read like some really wholesome books after this one to like reset my nervous system. I do feel as though the book wrapped up in a way that wasn't quite what I wanted it to be, specifically with the Floyd character line. I feel like it was kind of like rushed and didn't make a ton of sense. The story takes you along the ride for figuring out where Ellie Mack went, her journey, her experience, the motive of the person who, took her, and how it all ties back. It's kind of crazy. So I definitely recommend it if you're into a thriller. It is a little creepy, but that's okay. It was a good read. I had a good time. All right, the next book I read was on my physical TBR. So it came from my Dorothy mug. I drew this one, and I was really excited about this one because This has been on my physical TBR for a long time, and it was suggested to me because I love elephants. They're probably my favorite animal. This is by Jodi Picoult, which I learned recently is how you say her last name, so that's really good to know. Jodi Picoult, like Pico de Gallo. Okay, that's how I'm gonna remember it. Okay, so maybe you can remember that way too. But this book received 5 stars from your girl. This was absolutely beautiful. I loved every single aspect of this book. Not only was it beautiful, but it was a very fun mystery book. It was honestly such a shock. I don't even want to, I'm not, okay, first of all, words are hard. It was broken up into short chapters, okay, which was amazing. And I love a multiple POV story. The story is following this young girl named Jenna, and she's trying to track down what happened to her mom years ago at this point, because her mom just disappeared one day and never came back, but they never really knew what happened to her. The police didn't, it was not defined. Basically, the mom was an elephant researcher, and the chapters that Alice, the mom, the perspective of Alice, the mom, writing about elephants, oh, my heart like exploded every time because it was just so much fun to read about the elephants. But Alice was an elephant researcher, and she worked at a like elephant conservatory with her husband. But Jenna, her daughter, never gave up on what happened to her mom, and she goes on this whole journey to find her mother. And we meet a police officer, and we meet a psychic, and it's like an unlikely trio to help Jenna find her mom. And we learn, Jenna starts to learn about her mom's history, like her mom had an affair. It's crazy. So I'm not going to explain how it ended because it was like the way I sobbed at the end was amazing. But the unlikely trio solves the mystery, and we learn what happened, and it's beautiful and wonderful and just so well written. And I'm getting goosebumps. Like, this book may be getting like the Becky stamp over there because 5 stars. It was so beautifully written. I enjoyed it so much. Okay, and in the back of Leaving Time is the novella Larger Than Life. And so I read that because I was super interested, and it definitely wasn't as good as Leaving Time, but that's okay. It's a novella. What do we expect? I gave it 3.5 stars. It follows Alice in her life before she moved to America. She used to work in Africa. She studied elephants out in the wild, raised a calf elephant, and nursed it back to health and tried to re-assimilate it, like get it back into the wild. And all the herds rejected the elephants because the elephants smelled too much like a human. And she failed this elephant, and it really drove her to make better choices for future elephants, and like really drove her to improve her practice. So, and then there's also like juicy little love moment in the Larger Than Life too. So it was a really fun novella. I read it on the treadmill. It took me like an hour to read it. It was like 60 pages. It was super easy read. So if you're looking for fun little books to read, both of these I definitely will be picking up more Jodi Picoult's books in the future, because this one was a great one to start off with for sure. Okay, next up we have How to Solve Your Own Murder. I read this on my Kindle. This is actually the book club book that my sister and I are reading together. My sister and I decided to do a book club this year. I gave this book 3.5 stars. Here's what I'm gonna say about this book, okay? As you know, we love multiple POVs in this house, okay? My favorite part of this book was the 2 different POVs from Annie, who is like our main character, and Frances, who the story is kind of revolving around. So basically Frances receives this fortune from a psychic, and basically there's like all these things that lead to her murder, and Frances becomes fixated on it and spends her whole life worrying about it. And she lives in this small town and everyone thinks she's crazy. And Annie is the daughter of Frances's niece, I believe, her sister's daughter. I don't really remember the connection there. Frances is her great aunt. Okay, so Annie and her mom live in the house that Aunt Frances, her great Aunt Frances, owns in London. And Annie's mother is an artist and she wants to convert the basement into like a studio. And so she's asked Annie to clear it out and send anything back to her great Aunt Frances that she feels like is in the way, right? Because it's kind of like a storage unit. So Annie and her bestie clear it out, send all the trunks back to Aunt Frances. She only checks a few trunks, she doesn't check all of them. And then a few days later, they receive a letter from Aunt Frances saying like, Annie needs to come to that town where she lives and deal with the will, and Annie's mother is no longer in the will. And Annie's mom is like, that bitch, basically. But anyways, fast forward, Annie goes there and deals with all the stuff. And basically, Aunt Frances has tasked her family to solve her murder for her because, spoilers, Aunt Frances was indeed murdered. And that is the crux of the book. We find out that she's been murdered. And she has tasked all these members of her family with finding out her murderer. And whoever finds it out correctly receives the inheritance. And so thus begins the great race of figuring out who killed great Aunt Frances. This book was a blast to read. I had such a good time. It was very fun, very well written. I will tell you this, the 3.5-star rating comes simply because of the ending. The journey to get to the ending was so much fun, so many twists and turns. I had a great time. And then we got to the ending and figured out who indeed murdered great Aunt Frances. Okay, that's how I felt reading the book. Okay, great, awesome. It fell so flat for me. I feel like the ending was rushed. I feel like it was like they tried to tie it in a bow really quickly, and it wasn't good. Like if the process that Annie was going through, like she was reading Aunt Frances's old diary, so we were learning about Aunt Frances, like going back in time while Annie was trying to figure stuff out. It was so good. It was such a good time. I flew through it. But the ending, man, it was like, oh. All right, and then I read Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey. This one was fun. I gave it 3 stars. I thought that it was a really fun, lighthearted romance book. It was spicy. I felt like, okay, it was like, whoo, spicy. But it was fun. It was definitely like textbook grumpy sunshine romance situation. And I really liked the female main character and the male main character. I feel like they were a fun duo, and I liked the sentimental aspects of the story and like the family dynamics of both the female main character and the male main character. I thought that they meshed well. I think it is a fun read. I think that if you were looking for a lighthearted, easy vacation read, Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey could be one of the ones to add to your list because it was fun, it was cute, it was lighthearted, had a little bit of spice to it. Like it had some like spicy scenes, and you were like, whoo, Lord. So if you're looking for something like that, definitely check out Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey for sure. Get a Life, Chloe Brown. And this book was so good. It gets 4.5 stars from me. It was absolutely awesome. So it follows Chloe, right? So basically Chloe has multiple invisible disabilities like fibromyalgia, I can't remember all the other ones. But she's like has chronic illness, and so she lives her life very segmented. She takes scheduled walks. That is the length in which she goes to segment her life, basically, right? Because she's in so much pain and she struggles, right? And one day on a walk, she almost gets hit by a car, okay? And her life flashes before her eyes and she realizes, what have I done? What am I doing with my life? My life is so boring. If I died right now, my gravestone would basically would read, here lies Chloe, boring ass bitch. The author didn't read it like that, but that's basically the summation of what Chloe realizes in that moment. And so she makes a promise to herself that she is gonna get a life. So she makes a list in true Chloe fashion on things that she wants to accomplish, okay? And she meets Red, her landlord, and basically employs him. I mean, she doesn't pay him, but like she enlists him to help her complete the list, and hearts aflutter and things abound, and they end up falling in love, and it's really a beautiful story. And the spice, the homie Red, that man was spicy, okay? And wonderfully written. It was so much fun, and I can't wait to read about the other sisters in this series, so I'll definitely be adding the sisters to my TBR to read in the future as well. Life's Too Short by Abby Jimenez. I gave this book 4 stars. It was so beautiful, you guys. This book follows, oh my gosh, I think her name's Vanessa. Yes, this book follows Vanessa and Adrian, and Vanessa is a YouTuber. Hi. Oh my gosh, you guys are sliding. Vanessa is a YouTuber who is a big ALS advocate, and she's a travel vlogger, and she like lives life to the fullest because her family suffers from hereditary ALS disease. So her mom had it, her aunt had it, and her sister had it, and so she has a 50-50 shot of having ALS herself. And basically there's no cure for ALS. You just get diagnosed with it, and then you eventually slowly deteriorate. And ALS is such a devastating disease to so many, and it is horrifying. In fact, one of Garrett and I's favorite Survivor players, his wife had ALS. Heartbreaking, which I'm not going to spoil everything, but basically Vanessa ends up having to take care of her sister's baby, and Adrian and his current girlfriend were trying to go to sleep, and the baby next door would not be quiet, and he was being so loud, and so he went over to knock on the door, basically because his girlfriend was like, if you don't get that baby to shut up, I'm leaving and going to stay in a hotel, and they do long distance. And he was like, I can't leave, like she can't leave. So he walked over and he was like, can you make your baby be quiet? Which I don't have children, but I've worked with enough children to know there's nothing that's more helpful to someone trying to soothe a incredibly fussy baby to tell them to make their baby to be quiet. There's nothing more helpful than that. Like, can you imagine? That's just you know what? Actually, thank you for knocking on my door at 4 a.m. I will make my baby be quiet now. Thank you. I'm so sorry for disturbing you. So she basically said that to him, and he was like, you know what? Give me the baby. You go take a shower. And for whatever reason, she trusts him, and he calms the baby down, and they become friends, basically, because he eventually gets the baby to be quiet, and he goes back to his apartment. And the next morning, the girlfriend that he currently has leaves, and she's like, yeah, by the way, like, we're breaking up. I'm married. You're the other man. I can't do this anymore. And he's like, but see, the thing is, he's a lawyer, and he's so into his job that he doesn't even notice like how little time they spend together, and how like segmented his life is with her, because it's convenient for him, basically. So anyways, so he's going through a breakup, but he becomes friends with Vanessa, and they kind of form a little family, and it's really sweet. And eventually, you know, the fireworks start fireworking, and they fall in love. And then he figures out he doesn't really question much of her ALS concerns. Like, he doesn't really watch her YouTube channel. His assistant Becky, which was so funny, loves Vanessa and like is obsessed with her, and like is like, what, you didn't know that? Anyway, so things unfold, and basically he finds out that she could really have ALS, and it's really horrible, and he's heartbroken, and he's like, he needs control so bad because of his past trauma, and she refuses to take the treatments because she's seen her own family members deteriorate and hate their lives, and she has decided that if I have ALS, I'm gonna live my life to the fullest, and I'm not gonna wait to die. Like, I'm gonna do what I can until it happens to me, right? And he doesn't like that. So anyways, things go, and it's just beautiful. It's an amazing story. It's just kind of like talking about how like you only live once, and you gotta grab life by the balls, basically, and not be afraid to take risks and travel and post the vlog, you know. And so it was cool. I really enjoyed reading it. I kind of feel like I may increase the rating, to be honest, now talking to you about it, because it was probably my favorite. Maybe recency bias, because I really liked yours truly as well. I don't know. So before we leave, I need to draw my physical TBR book for the month of February. So we are gonna do that right now. Okay, we got it. Ooh, okay. We got the Inheritance Games. That's my physical book I need to read. Here we are, the Inheritance Games. This is going to be my physical book of February for my physical TBR that I need to read. I'm excited about this because I've never read a fantasy book. So this is going to be my first ever fantasy read. And I think in February, that's a great time to read a fantasy book. So that is gonna be my February book of the month. All right, my friends, that is all I have for you guys today. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure you give it a thumbs up or comment down below how many books you read in the month of January, or if you had a favorite read in the month of January, please let me know down below. I'd love to have conversations about it. Or if you read any of the books I talked about and you have opinions, I want to talk about it. I love chatting about books, okay? And if you would like to pick up the Inheritance Games and read it with me in the month of February, we can chat about it in next month's February wrap up. So grab this book if you haven't already and let's read it together. That'd be super fun. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video super soon. Bye.